Hello, Vaughn. Another busy week in the Victoria legislature. The bond rating agencies were out this week with their report card, if you will, on the provincial government and our finances. What did we learn?
Well, we had a double header of bad news for the government this week. So Moody's and S&P, which are the two big credit rating agencies out there, both gave this NDP government a negative verdict. They downgraded the province's credit rating, and they also said the outlook is negative. So this matters for a couple of reasons. One, because you pay more to borrow money, and BC is borrowing a lot. But more than that, one of the things that really jumped out in the report is they says this government, this BC government, has departed from British Columbia's history of prudent management of provincial finances. BC governments have tried over the years to protect the province's top credit rating. This government has not done that, and that matters because the previous NDP government, the one led by John Horgan with Carol James as finance minister, took the credit rating really seriously and did their best to protect it and succeeded. Horgan left a $6 billion surplus in the budget. EB promptly spent that, and EB is now planning to run an $11 billion deficit this year. And the credit rating agencies say they don't believe that number. They think we're probably headed for 14 billion, so a deficit. So that's a serious deterioration in provincial finances. And in just a short period of time, we were in surplus AAA territory when John Horgan left office in the fall of 2022, so less than 3 years ago.
So what does Premier Eby say about this reversal of fortunes?
Well, he said yesterday, I hear what they're saying. Oh, that's encouraging. At least he read the reports. And he says, I share their concerns. We are going to tackle this problem of debt and deficits and get it under control. We've not seen a plausible plan to do that, Harold. In fact, one of the rating agencies says they've seen what the government says it's going to do, and they don't think it'll work. They don't think the government even has a credible plan to get provincial finances under control, to get us back to a balanced budget, to get the debt managed in manageable proportions. So the credit rating agencies take their time doing this thing. It doesn't happen overnight, but British Columbia's trend line is very discouraging. And again, you hear from New Democrats that, well, nobody cares about the credit rating agencies. Well, a guy named John Horgan and a finance minister named Carol James did care, and they did their best to manage things, and they succeeded. It's David Eby that has abandoned that NDP tradition of prudence and effort to maintain provincial finances on an even keel.
On the topic of provincial finances, the elimination of the carbon tax blew nearly a $3 billion hole in the provincial budget on the revenue side. What's next for the government on that front?
Yeah, we had an overnighter here at the legislature on Monday. The government decided to put through the repeal of the carbon tax in one day, and they did that. We debated all night and into 2 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. The most interesting thing there really was the opposition. The Conservatives voted. They opposed the carbon tax. They weren't going to vote to keep it, but they asked a lot of questions and got no answers. The big questions were what you referred to, Harold. Removing the carbon tax was going to bring in $3 billion in the financial year we're in. The government said, well, we're not going to have any more rebates, so that'll save $1 billion. Now, that still left a $2 billion hole in provincial revenue. So what was the government going to do about it? Finance minister, she just didn't answer. She said, we have a plan, we're working on it, and we'll get back to you with the details with the next update on provincial finances. So the next update on provincial finances is due in September. That will be a full year after David Eby first promised to get rid of the carbon tax. So it's not like they're in any rush to figure out the consequences of this. I guess in September, we'll know if there's going to be any changes. They said they're not going to increase taxes to pay for this.
The carbon tax, at least the consumer carbon tax, which is the bulk of it, is gone. There's still some left, though, right?
Yeah, there's it's called an input-based carbon tax for heavy industries to have to pay a big carbon tax if their competitors overseas didn't have a carbon tax, and that was the case. So what they did was they said they have a carbon tax, but the big industry is allowed to offset that if they adapt to technology that saves on emissions and all that. So there's an incentive. That tax brings in about $200 million a year. So the remaining $3 billion that we were projected for the carbon tax, that's all coming from consumers. So what you pay at the gas pump, your home heating bills, things like that. And be sure that the full saving from the carbon tax, 17 cents a liter, is coming off at the pump. There's a real dispute about that. The government says it's monitoring the problem. They think the oil and gas companies will fall in line. Well, I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, one place where the government is vowing to, I guess, cut costs is in the healthcare sector. What's going on there?
Yeah, so we started, yeah, that's right. We started the week, actually. First thing, Monday morning, they announced that they are launching into a promised review of administrative bureaucratic costs, waste. They appointed Dr. Penny Ballum to oversee the first review at the Provincial Health Authority. Government says that, you know, they're pretty darn sure there'll be some administrative waste and duplication there. There's plenty of evidence of that. British Columbia, according to the Canadian Institute for Health Information, which is independent, it says that British Columbia spends almost twice as much on administration of the health system, $350 million, as does Alberta, which spends $180 million. British Columbia has 70 presidents and vice presidents in the health authorities. Alberta has fewer than 10. Josie Osborne says that she's asked Dr. Ballum for a preliminary briefing on what she's found within 6 weeks, but she also told the House that she's not going to release that to the public. So we're not sure where this thing is headed. And of course, you could point out, as we have, that Dr. Penny Ballum was the head of the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority up to this week. So they're asking somebody who, you know, ran a health authority to now blow the whistle on all the waste and duplication in the system. So I guess we'll see what we get out of this.
Right. All right. Well, lots to look forward to. Thank you, Vaughn.
Thank you, Harold. We'll talk again next week. Lots, I'm sure, next week too.